This guy can literally spawn anything he wants out of thin air. He's gotta be totally broke, probably living in some rundown slum. Food isn't even a problem since he can literally spawn it out of thin air whenever he wants. No clothes? Whatever, that's not even a problem for them! He can literally just think one into existence. And his secret power? It's literally just a him! This guy can basically use any skill he can dream up, but I'm not gonna spoil the hype. So let's just jump straight into the story. Out of all the adventurers fighting monsters to save the land of Eldorado, Hagito and his squad are at the very top. They're the legendary Heroes Party. But one person in that squad was on a whole other level. Out of nowhere, Rick just got kicked out of the party. Flashback to a month ago, when the hero and second prince of the Grandane Empire, Heinz, ordered Rick to hand him a backup sword. Rick drops to one knee to hand it over, and this is Rick Von Newfield, the second son of the noble Newfield family and a support mage. Layla told Rick he better not keep Heinz waiting, while Sasha begged Heinz to actually be careful for once. He just flashed a cocky smirk and called her a total worrywart. He lunged at the Minotaur with a cocky smirk, thinking his sword skills were way too high level for some weakling to handle. Man, he's rushing in way too deep again, so Rick triggers his Class 2 Windstorm and Might magic to back Heinz up. He just clicked his tongue, looking super annoyed. The Minotaur put its fists up to fight, but Heinz was way too fast and sliced the beast clean in half with his sword. Everyone in the hero's crew was super hyped about him, but Sasha was the only one not impressed. She knew the only reason Heinz actually took down that Minotaur was because of Rick's magic. Right on cue, Heinz glared at Rick, asking if he really thought he'd lose without help and telling him to stay out of his way. So Rick just bowed and kept quiet to avoid any drama even though he was only trying to be safe. Fennis the Archer, or just F, started gassing up Heinz's ego, but suddenly a magic circle glowed under their feet, and Sasha screamed for everyone to get back, but they couldn't even budge because that magic circle had already kicked in. A magic circle pops up and summons a ton of monsters, so Rick tells everyone they've got to move fast. But Heinz was losing his strength fast, and every second he spent in that magic circle just drained him even more. Right as a Minotaur raised its massive axe to smash Heinz and Fennis, Rick suddenly warped right between them using his Class 2 Windstorm magic, but Heinz Ketchup actually had the nerve to complain that he was being way too slow. Sasha says these monsters will eventually vanish, but the real question is if they can even survive that long while the so-called hero is busy crying for someone to save him first. Rick heals Heinz with Class 3 magic, and Heinz tells everyone to fall back so they can pick off the monsters one by one from a distance. Wait, did he seriously just leave himself wide open on purpose? Rick tells everyone to get in position at the front while he charges straight in using his Class 2 Windstorm magic. Heinz gave Fennis the signal, and just like that, their plan was a go. He had to figure out a solid plan before they both made a run for it. She whipped around and fired a scent-filled arrow right at Rick, while Heinz just smirked and dumped the whole mess on the useless guy. Rick's eyes popped in total shock as he realized he was just bait, and now he's got to take down every single monster by himself, while the rest of the group just turned tail and bolted. Sasha was the only one who stayed behind, and she started blasting those monsters with her Class 3 flame arrow magic. They didn't even fall and just kept staring her down. Heinz tried to stop her, but she refused to back down from helping Rick and promised to snitch to the Emperor about everything he'd done. Heinz turned his back and told Layla to handle her, so Layla grabbed Sasha to drag her out, but Sasha started fighting back. Layla had to knock her out and carry her off, while Rick just watched in total shock, wondering if his own squad was seriously about to ditch him. He clenched his jaw and cranked his magic shield up to the max. He's left wondering what he could have possibly done to deserve this nightmare. Is it because he's from a noble family, a secret son, or just a support mage. Either way, he's going to survive. But the second he casts his class, leaving him wide open for the monsters to jump him. The guy was hurting like crazy. Just as he thought he was finished, his head started pounding like crazy. Suddenly, he gets hit with quick flashes of Earth, Japan, science, and even the legendary Truck-kun. Wait, is this a memory? But hold on, whose is it? Hold on, his? Are these seriously Rick's memories? It all finally clicks for him, and suddenly this glowing light hits him because it felt sorry for how pathetic his death was. He's definitely not just some random hero. And wait, even more of his memories are finally starting to flood back. A voice calls out from the light, asking if he finally remembers everything. Rick told the goddess who just popped up out of nowhere that he was totally down. He can't really remember how he died because his brain is blocking out the trauma, but the goddess told him it's totally fine to just let it go. His memory is a total blur, but it looks like he died playing the hero, only for the person he saved to end up dead anyway. He let out a sigh, thinking he'd died yet again, but the goddess totally shocked him by saying he was actually still alive. She jumped in with her god-tier powers because he still hadn't used the crazy gift she gave him. Rick was totally confused because he thought his support magic was a reincarnation gift, but it turns out he actually earned it all through his own hard work. The gift she gave him was actually supposed to wake up the second he turned 16. This is his own creation, and it's straight-up holy magic! It supercharges your magic and even lets you create brand new things out of thin air. It's straight-up broken, and he'll find out just how crazy it is when the moment hits. It's finally time for him to wake up, so the goddess gives him a quick kiss on the head and chucks him into the sky while he's still yelling because he has so many questions. But he had to head back right now, and the goddess could only pray that he'd finally find some real happiness in this life. Rick shot awake with a huge gasp, his eyes flying wide open. He sits up and touches his head, but when he sees blood on his hand, he starts wondering if that was even a dream. Not even close, because every single monster that had him surrounded is now face down on the dirt. Talk about a miracle! He's still totally cornered, but he's literally bursting with insane energy right now. He's picturing Sasha from just a second ago, firing off her level 2 flame arrow magic. But he's not stopping there. He wants his fire to burn way hotter, like those insane blue flames. Rick fires off his Class 3 Flare Genesis, unleashing a barrage of holy magic flame arrows. They all slammed into the monsters surrounding him and burned them to a crisp. Rick was finally back on his feet. He dropped to his knees, his whole body shaking like crazy. Man, this move isn't just crazy strong, it totally drains his energy too. He passed out cold from being totally worn out, but when he finally woke up, he was resting right on Sasha's lap. She was sobbing and saying sorry over and over, and it looks like they're finally back. Hines just rolled his eyes and said Rick got lucky. But honestly, everyone survived because his plan was totally big brain, which is exactly what you'd expect from the hero of the group. Rick slowly closed his eyes, thinking back to the goddess telling him to just be happy. He wondered if she'd tell him to use his new powers to save the whole world. A few days pass, and Rick is already back on his feet and feeling way better. He was just sitting on his bed staring out the window, wondering if he even belonged in the hero's party anymore, when suddenly someone knocked on his door. Sasha heads inside and sits right by his bed to check on him, and Rick promises her he's feeling totally fine now. Sasha let out a sigh, her face turning totally red just thinking about how Rick is always there to rescue her. Rick looks totally lost, so Sasha asks if he remembers their first meeting, and man, he'll never forget the shock of finding out she was actually a secret noble lady in disguise. 4 years ago, Rick saved Sasha from getting kidnapped and even teased her about her outfit, but he still remembers getting totally wrecked in that fight. Sasha stood up and insisted he still looked totally cool, but her face turned bright red the second she realized what she just said. She bolted out the door, but promised she'd be back to check on him later. Rick's just sitting there totally lost, and once she finally leaves, he starts thinking back to 4 years ago when he was just a regular commoner until he saved 2 daughters from a Duke's. If he messes this up, he's gonna lose Sasha, the only friend he's got left. But is a noble even allowed to just walk away from the hero's party like that? But if things went south, the Emperor was totally gonna make him pay. There's no way he's letting that go down. If he tries to quit the squad, he might as well just walk straight to his own funeral because he's dead meat no matter what, and that's just way too risky. He's totally out of options, so he's finally gonna use that move. Fast forward to today, Rick is lugging around 2 huge bags and complaining about having to pay for everyone's infi. Hines straight up said it's obviously because he's just totally useless. Rick runs over whining about being broke, but Hines just glares at him, thinking it's crazy how this guy acts so tough and talks back without even knowing who he's messing with. He's a literal prince, but he just shoves Rick out of the way and sends him stumbling. A book slips right out of his bag, and Fennis dives down instantly to see what it is. But the second she opened it, everyone's faces completely dropped, and she sprinted over to hand it to Hines. The second he read those words, he got so mad that veins literally popped out of his face, and he turned to Rick demanding to know what the heck was going on. Rick was shaking and swearing because his whole diary, filled with his private rants and deepest secrets, had just been totally exposed to them. If his family finds out, he's getting kicked out for sure, but he's not about to let it all end like this. Even though the Emperor hand-picked him for the job, he's totally dead meat if the big boss finds out. So how is he ever going to survive this? Fennis watched him totally lose it and wondered if he'd finally snapped, while Hines just smirked, ready to give him exactly what he wanted. And just like that, Rick got kicked out of the hero's squad for good. Fennison and Layla are totally down for this, and honestly, they look pretty hyped about it. Even Sasha, the only person Rick actually trusted, was forced to do exactly what Hines said. Hines shot Rick a cocky smirk and told him he better not show his face around them ever again. Then he just takes off with the rest of his squad. An old guy came over to see if he was okay, but Rick was shaking like crazy and just thanked him before disappearing into an alley. Right there, he finally let out that laugh he'd been holding back. He's super pumped that it actually worked, because now he can finally ditch that selfish prince for good. Sasha probably hates his guts now, though. He basically wanted this to happen, but getting kicked out of the hero's party is definitely gonna cause some massive drama with his family. Once Rick remembered his past life, he was totally done with how Hines ran things, so he started acting out just to get himself kicked out. Their big plan actually worked perfectly. Gordo's the big boss and he's not gonna let this slide, so it'd be perfect if he just decides Rick is a loser and kicks him out of the family. Should he just turn tail and bolt while he still can? Wait, if it looks like he bailed, his mom is in huge trouble, so he's gotta get to Dorland right now. After 3 whole days of walking, Rick finally made it to the massive Grand Dine Empire Dorland. He's totally wiped out, but since he got to test his Genesis magic and learned a ton, it wasn't a total waste. He's trying to figure out how to fake it, but his brain is totally fried from burning through way too much mana. He was just zoning out while walking when a girl suddenly jumped up holding a box. She bumped Rick with her butt and sent him crashing straight to the ground. She starts apologizing like crazy, but Rick thinks he's actually the one who should be sorry. She stares at him totally confused, feeling like she's definitely seen his face somewhere before. Suddenly, she drops into a deep bow and starts apologizing like crazy because she finally spotted that gold stripe on his collar, realizing he's actually from the Newfield family. But Rick just waves it off and tells her to chill since he's basically just a regular guy now. Rick felt bad and helped her load up the carriage, but when he asked if she needed anything else, she told him he'd already done way more than enough. Rick gave her a head pat and told her she was doing an awesome job helping her family with all those errands. Seriously, why did he do that? It's definitely gonna look super weird to a total stranger. Seeing her laugh instead of getting mad was a huge relief, since it looked like she actually didn't hate it after all. She quickly snapped out of it and denied everything, explaining she was actually there to buy supplies for her own shop, which totally shocked Rick since he thought she was just a servant. Running her own shop is a huge deal, but she's so cute he's actually getting worried, and she gives him another big thank you for helping out. She told him to swing by her shop if he's ever in Zurich, and Rick wondered if that's the same place from the Jolt commercials where his mom's family lives. And just like that, they said their goodbyes and headed out. He watched the carriage roll away and suddenly realized he totally forgot to ask for her name. But whatever, he just knows they're gonna meet again. Suddenly, a fancy carriage with a hawk symbol pulled up right behind him. He was totally losing it because it had only been 3 days since he left the party, right? A butler hops out of the carriage and bows to Rick, letting him know the young lady is already waiting for him. Just like he thought, they didn't waste a single second jumping into action. The 2 girls he saved 4 years ago were actually Sasha and Amelia. This is the girl the butler was talking about, and here's her whole name. Meet Amelia von Runa Saber, the Duke's second daughter, and the girl who's actually his fiancée. Rick sat across from Amelia as she grilled him on what it meant to be kicked out of the heroes' party. But he totally got it. He'd be booted from the noble family, and Amelia called him out for being way too happy and realized he'd totally changed. He only landed that engagement because he was tight with the first prince. But now that the deal is dead, he's left with absolutely nothing. She kicks her shoes off, warns him to watch his head, and straight up orders him to kneel before her. Rick drops to one knee right away, and since he's being so obedient, she decides to give him a real shot. She shoved her foot under his chin and told him he could stay a noble if he just went through with the engagement. The Lord straight up banned him from entering, but that shouldn't even matter since they're engaged, and even though he knows exactly who she is, he's just ignoring it because she's not actually forcing him, so it's totally his choice to say no. But he should really think about how sweet it is to keep his noble title and stay off the Emperor's hit list. It's for real. He's definitely getting kicked out of Newfield, and if Heinz messes up, the Emperor might even come after him. It's not just him in danger anymore, because even his mom could get dragged into this mess. But he's still not backing down. Rick's done holding back, so he drops Amelia's foot and tells her she's acting straight up disgraceful. Amelia's face went totally red as she shouted his name, but he'd already hopped off the carriage. Before heading out, he gave her a deep bow to show how much he appreciated everything she'd done for him. He slammed the carriage door shut and completely ignored her as she shouted for him from inside. The butler walks right up to Rick and asks if he's actually serious about this choice. Rick said yes, and that gave him the push he needed to finally lock in. He knew they were in totally different leagues, so he had to face the truth. The butler understood why. Amelia only flashed that legendary smile when she was hanging out with him. She was wearing a smile they'd never seen before in their entire lives. Rick tried to speak up, but the butler just bowed and dipped before he could say a word. Rick kept pushing forward until he finally arrived at the Newfield house, and it's been a total eternity since he last saw his real dad. He's got a plan, but is this fake magic gold really gonna hold up? He's actually going for it, but the guards at the gate step up and block his path. He just scratches the back of his head and asks if they've ever heard of him. Rick von Newfield. He's the second son of this house, so why are they treating him like a total stranger? The guards say that Did gave orders to block him no matter what. Of course, he already saw. Right then, someone just let out a huge, mocking snort. It was Didvan Newfield, the oldest son of the Newfield Viscount family. And man, he just went totally beast mode. This guy has gotten way bigger since the last time Rick saw him. He grabbed onto the gate, shouting that he never wanted a commoner in their house from the very beginning. Rick totally brushed him off and handed over the fake gold as a little gift. He just scoffed as he took the money, wondering if this guy really thought some pocket change would make up for everything. He ripped open the sack and snatched up that super shady-looking jar. He's actually blaming Rick for swiping it from the mansion's medicine cabinet to poison him. Rick is totally shocked. He didn't put a single thing in that jar. This whole thing, out of nowhere, a super serious voice boomed out and told everyone to shut up. This was Gordo von Newfield, the head of the Newfield family and the big shot lord of Dorland. He ratted Rick out for trying to poison him, claiming Rick is just jealous of the inheritance and wants to backstab the Newfields to steal their power for himself. That jar is the ultimate proof, and Rick just smirks because he knows they're already set on kicking him to the curb. Gordo turns to him, thinking he might actually be useful, but Heinz labeled him a total failure, and even his engagement to the Duke's daughter got trashed. Rick's face twisted in rage when that fat jerk actually had the nerve to call his mom a nobody. He grabbed the gate and shouted at him to take back that insult. Honestly, the only reason he's such a failure is because of that weird new bloodline running through his veins. Gordo smacks him with his staff and just walks away without even looking back. They told him he's officially kicked out of the Newfield family, so he needs to drop everything they gave him and never show his face again. He needs to get his mom out of this town fast, because he knows exactly what's gonna happen if they stay. Even though he just got kicked out, Rick was actually standing there with a massive grin on his face. This is way better than he ever expected because a noble's word is law, and now he can finally save his mom without anyone stopping him. Did stayed back at the gate laughing at Rick, thinking the guy totally had it coming. He's hated this guy for way too long, so there's no way he's letting him and his mom walk away in one piece. This guy is totally about to hunt them down, and oh man, is Rick really dragging his own mom into this mess? Down in the absolute worst part of the empire, the slums, Rick was just wandering around in nothing but a pair of shorts. To him, it feels like time just froze because the whole town looks and even smells exactly the same as it did 4 years ago. He pulls up to a house at the very edge of town and realizes this is it. His mom's place looks exactly like he remembered, but they seriously need to bail before something happens. The guys chasing him finally catch up, but all he cares about is getting his mom to safety somehow. Rick knocks on the door and gets hit with a total shock. His mom, Maris, was so hyped she practically lunged at him for a massive welcome home hug. He's super relieved his mom looks healthy, but wait, how did she even know he was coming? She wiped her eyes, feeling so proud of the man her son had finally become, right as Rick was about to explain everything. He suddenly lets out a sneeze, so Maris quickly hands him a cloth before he catches a nasty cold. That was literally the only thing they had left back at the house. Rick grabs the cloth and asks if she's really sure, but Maris promises it's fine, even though you can tell she's been holding on to this high-end fabric for a long time. So if that's the deal, he's just gonna use it as a material. He pictures the perfect outfit for his mom, taps her shoulder, and triggers his Class 2 power. He uses holy magic to instantly upgrade their outfits into high-tier gear, and the fresh fabric wraps right around his shoulders. Maris was totally blown away, calling it straight-up magic. And honestly, she was right on the money. He actually picked up that skill while he was out exploring the world. She serves up 2 bowls of what's basically just potato water, and the recipe is so simple it's crazy. You just peel some potatoes, chop them up, and boil them in salty water. Ugh, it was so bitter. Seriously, forget the recipe and don't try this at home, guys. It's not just his mom's bad cooking that's the problem. Oh wait, I almost forgot about that! He pictured boiling down chicken bones and veggies, skimming the foam, and concentrating it all until, boom! He finally remade a dish from his past life after tons of trial and error. He uses Class 2 creation magic to summon a holy magic chicken. He dumped the spice into his bowl and told Marys he made it himself, asking her to just give it a shot even if she didn't believe him, and she was so down to try this magic seasoning that she didn't even hesitate. Rick handed her his bowl for a taste, and man, she was blown away by how many crazy flavors were packed into that soup. She's totally obsessed with it, but since there's barely any left, she's scared of wasting it. She thinks they should save what's left, but Rick tells her. Rick jumps at the chance to skip town with her, rushing her to his grandparents' place while making sure he keeps the scary details to himself so they don't worry. It's been way too long since she's been home, but if she stays with him, they can totally slip through the gates while he's still officially a noble. Maris is totally down because she was already planning to head home, but Rick is completely floored since regular people aren't even allowed to cross the border like that. Rick's daydreaming gets cut short when Mary's jumps up and says it's time to go, and when he tries to pack, she just tells him to forget it since they barely own anything anyway. Right then, they heard someone totally losing their mind outside. They're asking about Rick, but is he finished now that his own people totally sold him out? He ordered his goons to jump them, but Rick stepped out to shut it down. They're finally leaving town just like he wanted, so he needs to let these people go right now. That just made him even more furious because he couldn't believe this guy actually had the nerve to boss him around. He stomped his foot in a total rage and chucked the bag of fake gold Rick gave him. He figured out they were total fakes, even if he's putting it in a really weird way. Rick knew the boss wasn't the one who caught on, but the servant totally flipped out and ordered his goons to snatch him up. For real, this guy is all talk and absolutely zero action. The guys laughed and cracked their knuckles as they closed in on Rick, warning him that if he tried anything funny, his mom would be the one in serious danger. Rick looks back and realizes his mom's been caught too, and when the thugs ask if they can do whatever they want with her after taking him out, the leader just says yes. A girl like her is honestly just straight up gross and totally nasty anyway. Just look at her. She looks totally clueless, like she's just some random merchant's daughter or something. If she's getting with a guy she doesn't even love, then she's straight up for the streets. Rick couldn't stand the trash talk anymore and totally blew up, but Mary stopped him and told him to just forget about her. Did just laughed in their faces, calling their fake family a total joke for ignoring the past, and since he couldn't believe anyone would love a kid with gold blood, he ordered her to finally. Rick just stared at her, looking totally lost. He was left wondering what the heck was even going on. But all she really said was that he was a super cute baby when he was born. He just picked his ear, having zero clue what kind of crazy stuff she was even talking about. The guys pinning Rick down started cracking up when they saw him crying, keeping him trapped while Dyed got ready to deck him. But before he could even move, Rick unleashed Class 2. He uses his insane holy magic to create something massive and punches the two guys pinning him down. The last guy tried to stab him, but Rick dodged the blade and smashed his head instead. The thugs holding his mom tried to strike her, but Rick rushed in using his Class 2 windstorm and holy magic to absolutely crush them. He just stood there shaking, unable to believe Rick wrecked his whole squad in a heartbeat when he was supposed to be a total fraud who only got into the heroes party through connections. As Rick turns toward him, the guy stumbles back and hits the ground, desperately shouting for him to stay away. He yelled that nobles aren't allowed to kill each other, hoping it would be enough to stop Rick in his tracks. Did he seriously forget that Rick already got kicked out of the Newfield family? Hearing that, Mary's knew her gut feeling was 100% right. Rick apologized because he just couldn't bring himself to say it, but she told him not to worry since he'll always be her son, no matter what. Rick just smirked and nodded before snatching up a rock. He smashed it to pieces just like he promised, warning them that if they ever come back, Their heads are gonna explode exactly like that. That pig was so freaked out he literally peed himself. All right, with that out of the way, it's time for Rick and Mary's to get moving. The two of them booked it together, heading straight for the west gate. Right then, we see the carriage of that girl Rick met back in town. A pack of bandits was suddenly jumping him. She grabbed the reins and held on tight. She was desperately praying for someone to show up and save her. After getting kicked out of the hero squad and his own family just like he planned, Rick grabbed his mom and finally ditched the Empire. He headed straight for his home, the big merchant nation of Jilk. Rick sticks the landing back on the wagon after totally wrecking that flying monster. Thomas the coachman was seriously impressed, which makes sense for a guy who used to travel with the hero. Maybe those stories about him taking down 10 minotaurs at once are actually for real. Maris asked if it was for real, and Rick said totally, even though everyone else still thinks he's lying. Rick thanked Thomas for the sword, and Mary's apologized while asking him to keep them safe until they reached the trade nation of Jilk. The whole time they were on the move, Rick stayed wide awake to keep watch. It's way too quiet, making it hard to believe monsters are even real, and honestly, he's about to fall asleep. Maris saw him yawning and told him to take a nap, but he wasn't having it. This is basically nothing compared to the crazy stuff he went through while traveling with Heinz. He tells her he's totally fine since you never know what's coming, but man, he just completely jinxed himself. He spots a group of bandits sprinting through the trees. Thomas was freaking out, but since they hadn't been spotted yet, he felt a bit better, though he still wondered what those guys were actually hunting down. Rick looks up and spots them chasing a wagon, and it looks like the guards have already been wiped out. Even the horses are totally freaking out, and without a driver, that carriage is definitely going to flip. Thomas tells them to just stay on the highway and keep moving, because they're almost at the finish line anyway. Rick was just about to say yes. Suddenly, the girl inside the wagon screams for help, and he realizes he knows exactly who she is. He rushed in to save her, but Thomas held him back, terrified the bandits were closing in fast. He knows it's too late, but Rick is way too stubborn to give up and rushes in because he can still hear someone inside begging for help. Thomas is stressing over how to save them, but since the wagon and horses are totally off limits, Rick decides he's just gonna book it there on foot. So he just straight up leaped off the wagon. He bolted through the forest at insane speeds. Right then, one of the bandits catches up to the wagon and traps the girl. He was just about to lunge at her with a knife. Rick charges in and blasts the bandit right in the face with a kick, knocking his weapon away and dropping him cold. He sticks the landing right in the wagon and asks her if she's doing okay. That wagon is basically a death trap right now. They've got to take the leap, so Rick reaches out his hand to help her. The second she grabbed it, he hauled her out of there just moments before the wagon flipped over. She thanked him, but seeing the rest of the bandits closing in, she started panicking that he was going to get taken out too. She's honestly so sweet for worrying about everyone else first. But suddenly, 4 bandits jumped out and trapped them. They jumped off their horses and charged straight at those two. Right as the bandits closed in, Rick blocked them by casting his Class 2 Holy Magic Windshield creation. While the bandits just started freaking out, Rick saw his opening and absolutely crushed them. She looked around in total shock and thanked him for coming to her rescue. She finally introduced herself as Luna and said sorry for taking so long to say her name. Rick straight up denied being a hero when she tried to call him one. He even told her to stop being so formal and just call him by his name. Luna stops and thinks, wait a second, have they actually met somewhere before? Rick agreed they met in Dorland, but Luna's sure they met way before that, and even though Rick feels like they aren't strangers, he just can't remember her from back. There was no way he'd forget a girl that cute, and Luna just looked away all red-faced while thanking him. Rick realized what he just said and spun around totally embarrassed. And wait, is he actually rizzing her up right now? But then, suddenly that bandit he took out in the wagon sneaks up from behind and grabs Luna. He's totally locked in and won't stop until the job is done exactly how he was told. Rick saw Luna was in big trouble, so he pulled his sword and totally started freaking out. He sliced the bandit's head clean off and didn't even realize what he'd done until the guy was already dead. Luna thanked Rick for saving her again, but she got worried when he just stood there shaking and muttering that he'd actually killed someone. He's gasping for air and clutching his chest, totally freaking out over what he just did. They jumped him first, so it was kill or be killed, right? That's just how this world works, and he knows it. But it's still the first time he's actually ended someone. He felt every single detail. The skin ripping, the blade cutting deep, the bones snapping, the warm blood splashing, and that final look on the guy's face before he was gone. Everything is trapped inside Rick's head, and it's honestly just super gross. Right then, Luna crouched down in front of him and grabbed his hand. Then he straight up asked if this was his first time killing someone. Rick just face-palmed in frustration. See, in this world, you have to steal, lie, and even kill just to stay alive. It's totally normal here, but he's totally right that killing is normal in this world, but she absolutely hates anyone who can take a life without a second thought. There was no way she'd ever see the person who saved her as weak. He's basically her hero now, and Rick somehow made a miracle recovery. Maybe it was the power of love? But seriously, Luna must have been terrified too, yet he grabbed her hand and then stood right up. He's totally fine now thanks to her, and while Luna's just happy she could help, her legs start shaking when she tries to stand, so Rick has to catch her as she mumbles a super embarrassed apology. She talked a big game like she was all that, but it turns out she's the real weakling here. Out of nowhere, a wagon comes flying toward them, and a super worried Thomas yells out to Rick to see if he's okay. Rick saw they were all okay, and finally let out a massive sigh of relief. Luna says sorry and tries to get back on her feet with his help, while Rick just gives her this totally awkward look. He dragged himself back to the wagon, looking so pathetic that everyone was actually starting to get worried about him. But first, he couldn't stand watching her struggle anymore, so he just scooped Luna up and made her face turn bright red. He carries her back to the wagon, and Luna's so out of it she actually asks him to keep holding her just like that. She immediately panicked and took it back, knowing that if she kept talking like that, Rick would never want to let her go. Rick got her back to the wagon, and Thomas was just super relieved they were both okay. Maris totally misread the situation and thought he was bringing home a bride, making them both blush like crazy. He tried to explain that it wasn't like that, but things only got more awkward once Thomas started teasing them too. Looks like Rick's kindness totally rubbed off on him, and now he's actually out here helping people. Luna thanked him for coming through, but Rick was totally lost as he started using healing magic on her driver, Ananto. Maris was just relieved that Ananto and the cargo were totally fine, and Luna even used her name while saying thanks. Maris teased that she'd call his mother-in-law right now, and she cracked up when she saw him freak out because he totally fell for it. Luna thanked Rick again, but he was actually the grateful one because her wanting to head back to the carriage finally let him get his messy feelings in order. So Rick just finished burying the body of the bandit he took out, and he slammed his blade right into the ground, using it as a makeshift grave. It was basically his way of finally putting this whole mess behind him. He shut his eyes and prayed, vowing that even though protecting people is right, he'll never draw his sword again if he starts losing his mind. With that wrapped up, they finally headed back. Finally, they made it to the merchant city of Zurich, but the gate guards immediately stopped their carriage to search through all their stuff. They were totally shocked to find Luna inside, and when the guard asked what happened to her carriage, Ananto told him they'd been jumped by bandits. Anyway, the only thing that matters is they're safe, and Luna introduces Rick as the guy who totally saved them. The guard tapped him on the shoulder and thanked him for stepping up to save those two. Rick was totally shocked because he was sure they'd completely blown it. Oh yeah, I almost forgot about those crazy bandits. He used his magic and boom, the tied-up bandits they caught just spawned out of thin air. Ananto has this huge smirk on his face while bragging about Rick's insane magic, but the guard just stares at him, totally confused why he's acting so proud when he's not. As soon as the guard cleared out, Rick thanked Thomas for all the help and apologized for leaving the borrowed sword at the bandit's grave, but Thomas told him it was totally fine and, plus, he can always make more cash later, so he's just treating this like a cheap fee for the escort service. So that's how he's gonna run the city for a few months and stack up some serious cash. He wanted to get permission first, so he asked if the boss Zaji was at the shop, and as soon as Maris heard his name, she got super hyped because she actually knows him. Luna's face went totally dark as she started explaining what was going on. She found out her dad, Zaji, actually died just last month. Thomas was totally caught off guard since Zaji was younger than him, making him wonder if some kind of illness was actually to blame. Luna shakes her head, unsure if it was a freak accident or a monster ambush, but the bottom line is, he went shopping and never came back. Thomas apologized for making her remember those painful memories and prayed that Zaji was finally resting in peace. Since Zaji isn't the leader anymore, who's even calling the shots? Well, the next big election is going to decide that. Actually, Wales is the one running the whole show, and his company has a total lockdown on all the Xerox gear. They look like a brand new group of traitors, and they're the ones currently beefing with the Moon's big business, Luna's faction. She moved her shop to Dorland because she figured business would blow up way more once she left Zurich behind. She entered the election just to save the Moon's Drop Trading Company, which totally shocked Rick. He started wondering if she was way older than she looked, so he couldn't stop. She was 15, just like him, and it turns out you can actually run for representative at that age. Thomas asked if anyone else was picked for this, but Luna told him it was literally just her and the whales. Thomas stopped for a second to really think it over. He's got a hunch that those bandits who jumped her were actually hired by the Wales Trading Company. There are only 2 candidates left, so it doesn't take a genius to figure out who'd be happy if she just disappeared. Luna wasn't ready to make a final call since she didn't have any real proof yet. Suddenly, Rick remembered what that bandit blabbed about earlier. It turns out they were actually hunting her down because someone ordered them to. But now they're totally stuck and can't get a single piece of info out of them. Ananto thinks it's time to go get some answers from the guys they just caught. He decided to swing by right where the guards were posted up. Thomas's gut was screaming that they were in big trouble, so he told Rick to keep his mouth shut about what went down on the road. Luna might be totally powerless, but she's definitely backed by the Moon's Drop Trading Company if she ever gets into trouble. She knows she can always count on Rick, and if a problem can be fixed with cash, he's the guy to call. But for the stuff he can't handle, Rick is gonna step in and finish the job. And just like that, he's heading out while the group waves goodbye to Thomas. Luna asks the mother and son what their next move is. They're planning to head over to Maris's house back in her hometown. It's actually a little food shop that Karen runs. Luna knew that name instantly because Karen was always coming through for the Moon's Drop Trading Company. He offered to tag along for a bit since the Moon's Drop Trading Company was right on the way to the shop. The crew finally made it to the Moon's Drop Trading Company to drop Luna off. Suddenly, Nina the maid sprinted out the door, totally freaking out over Luna. But then, she suddenly caught sight of Rick and Maris. She chilled out instantly and gave a quick bow. She asked if they were business clients, but after Luna explained they actually helped her shop, Nina bowed again to introduce herself and thank them for looking after her. They're totally coming back later to give a real thank you, and even though Luna wanted to go right now, Nina reminded her she's swamped with the shop and the big election. The mom and son told them not to sweat the thanks and said they could visit whenever as they kept heading toward the shop. Suddenly, someone calls out Maris's name and grabs her right by the shoulder. Mary's recognized him instantly. It was Naval, and man, it had been way too long since they last saw each other. Naval was totally hyped to see her after 16 long years, and Maris couldn't help but smile when she saw his new look. She realized he was rocking a guard uniform, just like he was. He caught sight of Rick and straight up asked who he was. Maris grabbed Rick's arm and told everyone he was her son. She introduced Naval as her childhood friend, and Rick gave him a respectful bow to say hello. Naval already knew his deal, hearing rumors that he was a total beast, and he might have even known he used to be in the heroes party. Maris is super hyped, bragging about how her son is a total beast for taking down those bandits solo, but then he actually tells her to zip it. Naval had a massive, proud grin on his face the second he heard about Rick's big win. Oh right, the captain's calling him over, so they'll just have to catch up and talk about the old days when they're free. He finally headed out, and the second they were alone, Rick started begging Maris to just act normal for once. But honestly, that's just how parents roll. As they keep walking, they pass by this building that's way bigger than they expected. Maris instantly recognized the building as an old fruit shop that used to stock absolutely everything. From food and weapons to crazy magic items, this place is basically a giant warehouse from his old world. This whole place actually belongs to the Whales Trading Company. Right on cue, these massive whales suddenly popped up right next to them. He stepped out onto the balcony to start his big election speech and introduced himself to the crowd. He tells everyone he's stepping up as their rep, just to make sure he lives up to all their hype. Once Rick got his past life memories back, he got kicked out of the Heroes Squad and his family exactly like he planned, so he grabbed his mom and ditched the slums to head straight for. While heading to Mary's hometown, he jumped in to save a merchant named Luna from a group of bandits. They finally made it to Zurich, right in the middle of a heated election between Luna, the former leader's daughter, and the person currently running the city. Wales is the guy everyone thinks hired those bandits to take out Luna. Wales kept talking, reminding everyone that with monsters swarming outside the city, they're all freaking out about where their next safe meal is coming from. Don't even sweat it, because the Whales Trading Company just locked down the food supply in Zurich, and they're teaming up with the nearby towns to make sure everything runs super smooth for everyone. This shop is loaded with the best and safest gear, and since it's so obvious, there's no way they're letting the Moon's Drop Trading Company win. The old leaders were actually pretty strong and always hooked everyone up with some solid gear. But just because the old leader's daughter is in charge now doesn't mean life is actually going to get any better for them. One look at the Moon's Drop Trading Company's trashy products tells them everything, and eating that meat and those veggies would be a total disaster. Normally their stomachs would be killing them, but at the Whale Trading Company, that's never gonna happen. 3 guys in the crowd start laughing like crazy, catching Rick's eye, and he's like, "What's so funny? Aren't they just actors?" Wales promised he'd actually listen to them, try out some fresh ideas, and finally get this stuck city of Zurich moving again. So he straight up asked them to vote for him in the election happening in just 2 days. As soon as he finishes his speech, he heads back inside with a guy rocking a low ponytail who looks pretty scary. Is he a guard or just an assistant? Mary's noticed Wales was a total crowd favorite, but Rick was already fed up with his trash talk and hated how he looked down on his enemies. Mary's is totally on board, so they've got to step up and have Luna's back way more than before. Rick's totally losing it because she's trying to give her 100 billion votes, and he's wondering if they even know how elections work since they're both brand new to the city and shouldn't even be allowed to vote. They finally reach Karen's shop, Mary's childhood home she hasn't seen in 16 years, while Rick is just the new guy who has to introduce himself for the first time. To his grandparents, he's just the kid of the man who ruined their daughter's life, and they can't even stand to look at him. He's totally panicking now, and you just know his mom is probably just as stressed out. That's what he thought, but she's actually just charging straight in without a second thought. A girl who looked right around Maris's age was about to welcome her like she was just another customer. But then she finally realized exactly who she was looking at. She instantly pulled Maris into a massive hug to welcome her back. Since surviving 16 years in the slums is totally brutal and she definitely went through a lot. Maris pulls back from the hug and introduces Rick as her son, and while he gives a polite bow, he's actually stunned because he never even knew his mom had a sister. Maris was totally confused, but her sister stepped up with a huge grin and introduced herself as Karen. Maris laughs and tells her to quit joking, but then she drops the truth that she's actually her mom, and Rick is totally losing it. Karen introduces herself again as his grandma, and since she's Maris's mom, she's actually 51 years old, even though she looks like she hasn't aged a single day. Rick quickly bowed to show some respect, but Karen just laughed, totally loving that she was being treated like a young girl. Suddenly, the door flies open and Maris's dad bursts in, pulling her into a big hug. He was totally haunted by every single mistake he'd ever made. If he hadn't gotten caught up in work and never met Gordo in that city, he totally could have saved her from all this. He failed to save her, and even in death, he still can't forgive himself for it. And man, he's been going through total hell this whole time too. Right now, he's just super relieved she's okay, and as Maris wipes her eyes, she tells him her son Rick was the one who actually saved her, and he's the whole reason she actually managed to make it back. Rick gave a quick bow and introduced himself. His grandpa just stood there looking around in total shock, and man, it was seriously creepy. Just as his grandpa started heading right for him, Rick braced for the hit, but it never landed. His grandpa just turned around and walked away. Mary straight up asked if they could move in together for good. Her 58-year-old dad, Daigo, just told them they could do whatever they wanted. Oh, and heads up, they're actually closing the shop for the rest of the day. Rick knew he wasn't going to get a warm welcome, but man, this cold shoulder actually stings. But those two girls knew Daigo was actually super hyped, and even though he looked calm, he was totally doing a happy dance on the inside. Grandpa is such a classic tsundere. Rick wasn't so sure if that was actually true, and wondered if he and Daigo could ever really get along. So Karen led the way and showed everyone where they'd be staying. Meanwhile, Daigo stood there all alone, literally shaking because he couldn't believe he actually had a grandson. And get this, they're actually living under the same roof. Honestly, he couldn't be any happier than this. He pumped his fist and cheered, feeling so hyped to be alive and even more stoked that his grandson Rick looks just like him, a seriously good-looking guy. No way. It's honestly crazy to even think his grandson is on his level. He's got a talent so insane that he could make every single girl in the world fall for him. Just seeing his grandson's face every day makes him feel like he's in paradise. And now, they're finally going to make tons of awesome memories together. If Rick is also super good-looking and a perfect son, his popularity is going to blow up even more. Hold on, no way. His sweet little grandson is totally about to get played. Since he's the grandpa, he's got to find the perfect partner for him. But finding someone who can actually keep up with Rick is a whole different story. Luna from the Moon's Drop Trading Company is the only girl for the job, so he's going to introduce them himself next time to make sure Rick falls for her and everyone sees him as the game. Fast forward to later that day. Rick cooked up the beef stew he and Maris shared right before they finally left the slums behind. Karen was totally shocked that he could use magic to make food taste this amazing. Back with Maris, she was straight up inhaling her food. Diego just laughed at them for getting so hyped over a tiny bit of broth. But honestly, it's obvious he loved it too, since he was the first one to finish his whole plate. When the sun went down, Rick told his mom and grandma goodnight and then quietly snuck out of the house. He fired up his detection skill to see exactly what was going on. He followed the person he marked, just praying his gut feeling was totally wrong. Over in the Jilk commercial nation of Zurich, Our Luna from the Moon's Drop Trading Company is running to be the new city rep, following right in her father's footsteps. Then there's Wales, a rookie from the Wales Trading Company who's running the city, and we're just 2 nights away from their big election showdown. Rick followed Naval using the mark he'd put on him earlier that day just to see what he was up to. They're just praying he's only heading out for a quick patrol. The place is a total ghost town, but he keeps heading deeper in because he's finally reached his goal. Hold up, he just stopped dead in his tracks. Is it a guard shift change? No way, but it doesn't help that Rick can barely see anything right now. So he triggers his night vision skill to see right through the dark. He finally spots the guy Naval is meeting, and it's the same dude who was with Wales, but this is bad news because he's way too far away to hear their conversation. He switches on his super hearing to boost his ears 5 times past a normal person's limit, while Naval apologizes to Noise, the guy with the low ponytail, for keeping him waiting. That settles it. They definitely know each other, but what was Naval doing with someone from Wales's side? Well, he was about to find out the truth real quick. Noise noticed Luna didn't have a scratch on her, while Naval started blaming Rick for their massive failure. So that's what this whole thing was really about. Thinking back to their talk that day, Naval didn't even have to say it. Everyone already knew that since Rick used to be in the Heroes squad, he was definitely the one who... He's still trying to figure out if Naval and his mom actually knew each other. Noise is fuming because Naval totally blew it, even after they paid him a fortune and gave him a whole squad for backup. This is a massive problem because you can never trust an election until the toe. Rick's eavesdropping from behind the wall, knowing this secret meeting between the candidates' team and the election judges is a total deal-breaker, and he's wondering if Noise promised Naval that if Wales wins, the guards are finally going to get treated way better than they are now. Even with all these monsters popping up, their lives don't seem to... Naval finally realized they've got a master plan that basically guarantees Wales is going to win. Noise turned his back, saying he's not expecting much, but he'll be waiting to see what happens. Just to be safe, they're also setting up a plan to totally crush the Moon's Drop Company, but they're doing it all by the books. Rick started freaking out after hearing that both the guards and Wales's crew were teaming up to make sure Luna loses the election. Noise gave a quick wave and warned Naval that everything better go perfectly for the next 2 days before he finally headed out. Rick's completely lost on who's actually on Wales' side, and honestly, even if he called them out, nobody's gonna believe some random new guy who just showed up. He thinks about telling his family or Luna, but if she confronts them, they'll just say she's trying to sabotage Wales and the whole plan will totally backfire. So he's gotta find some real proof to show everyone they're total fakes. The election is literally the day after tomorrow, and he's got no clue how to handle this. Just as Rick was heading out, Naval mumbled something about his mom, Maris, but Rick couldn't really hear him and just took off. The next morning, Rick woke up and instantly used his magic to check on Naval and Noise. Naval's been patrolling since daybreak while Noise guards the whales, and even though their massive store is getting tons of supplies, everything looks totally normal with no suspicious moves at all. Suddenly, someone starts knocking on his door. Karen was just checking in to see if he'd run into any drama since showing up. Rick said he was totally chill, especially since he had his own room, and honestly, he couldn't complain about anything as long as he had the whole crew with him. Karen was happy to hear that, but she still wished he'd just speak up if he was having a hard time. Rick stopped to think, and he realized something was seriously bugging him. Karen pushed him to finally spit out what he was thinking. Rick was dying to know what the deal was with Zaji, the old rep from the Moon Trading Company, so Karen sat him down and told him that Zaji was actually a total legend he was a total saint who gave tons of money to churches and orphans, and Rick figured if Zaji was a pro at appraising items, he had to be a beast at business too. And yeah, he was such a natural with people that everyone just gravitated toward him, showing that Zaji and the villagers were clearly on amazing terms. Mary's cut their talk short to let Rick know someone was there to see him. Rick was just about to head out when Karen stopped him to say she's always there if he needs to talk. So he smiled and stepped outside only to find Luna waiting there to thank him. She's definitely coming back for a real visit after the election, and Maris is super grateful she helped out even though she's totally swamped with deliveries. Rick was totally shocked to see her handling every single delivery by herself, but she was dead set on finishing them all today, no matter what. Rick's gonna jump in and help her out, keeping a close eye on the action from behind his Dago. He's totally losing it wondering when these two even met, and now his big plan to look cool playing Cupid is completely trashed. Once he finally finished dropping off all the goods, Luna gave Rick a huge thank you for helping her out. Because of him, she finished all her deliveries way faster than usual. Rick just brushed it off and said it was no big deal. Exactly. Zaji's dad treated them like family, so she's stepping up as the representative just to protect that bond. Out of nowhere, they hear a loud shout and rush over to see what's going down. Standing right there are those three actors from Wales's speech, the Mohawk guy, Gonza, and the dude with the chest hair, who showed up because they heard rumors that Luna was almost... Luna snapped back that she's clearly still alive and demanded to know why they were making such a huge scene. Her dad's friend owns the shop and says those three started a total mess, but Gonza played it off like they were just giving an honest review. He grabbed a cucumber and showed it to the crowd, then snapped it right in half even though the shopkeeper told him to stop, proving it was totally dried out and empty inside. Like, everyone checked out the veggies and... yeah, they were straight up garbage. They'd only buy this junk if it was super cheap just to survive. But if it costs the same as the good... Luna explains that the Wales Trading Company bought up every vegetable around Zurich, leaving them with nothing but scraps. But Gonza thinks that sounds super sketchy. Buying in bulk keeps prices low for everyone. So Wales is just doing his job without breaking any laws. But he totally twisted her words to make the Moon's Drop Trading Company look like the bad guys. This guy just got to Zurich for the first time, and he'd way rather shop at Wales Trading Company because they look way better than Moon's Drop. Rick's wondering if these customers are even being for real since they're acting like total fakes. So Gonza grabs the shopkeeper and warns him his business is toast unless he ditches Moon's Drop and joins Wales's crew instead. If he pulls this off, he'll get way better stock and make a ton of money. But the shopkeeper is shaking because he still owes a debt to the dead boss of the Moon. Gonza leaned in and whispered like a total creep, saying that since the guy he owed is gone, it doesn't even matter. But he'll be back for an answer next time before just... The shopkeeper felt bad he couldn't just say no to them, but Luna totally got why he was in such a tough spot. She felt like she was the one who should be apologizing for those trashy vegetables, and since Rick couldn't stand seeing her so down, he immediately started looking for a way to fix things. He tracked down the shopkeeper in Bobbywed and asked if they'd sell the Dorland goods that Luna literally risked her life to get. The shopkeeper said yes instantly because he's totally down to help out. Luna tried to sell her jars of Dorland salt for 10 silver coins, but the shopkeeper told her that price was a total no-go. That's because the Wales Trading Company is selling the exact same thing for just 8 silver coins. There are only 27 hours left until the election is finally over. In this world, even nasty-tasting salt is a total luxury. Just 1 silver coin is worth a whopping 10,000 yen, so the difference between 10 coins and 8 is actually a massive. If they're both the exact same quality, you're obviously gonna go with the cheaper one. So this is the plan Noise had to crush the Moon's Drop Trading Company, and poor Rick was just getting played the whole time. They knew Luna was getting salt, so these big-time whales bought a massive stash from the same place and started selling it way cheaper right as her company launched. And then, Luna hits a massive wall because her salt just isn't selling anymore. Luna apologized to the shopkeeper she gave the salt to, since she never imagined the Whales Trading Company could get their hands on such a massive supply. These guys were totally on her side for the election and her business because they owe the previous owner big time. But now, they have to apologize since they're completely powerless against a giant corporation that's targeting them. Rick wondered if they were just terrified of the Whales Trading Company. But since they're merchants, it actually makes way more sense for them to ditch Moon's Drop and go where the real money is. Luna Bode thanked everyone for backing Moon's Drop since the old boss's time, but the crowd totally lost it, freaking out that she was closing the shop and about to go totally broke. There are about 300 jars of salt here, worth 3,000 silver coins, which means they're stuck with a massive 30 million yen debt. The shopkeeper looked super worried and asked her what she was gonna do next. Luna just flashed a smile and told them she's got major hookups, so even Rick totally fell for it and stopped worrying. He told her to just speak up if she needed anything, because they were totally down to help her out. The moment they're gone, Rick notices Luna's hands are shaking like crazy. She couldn't hold it in anymore, and tears finally started streaming down her face. He pulls her close, looking super worried, and he's honestly getting heated because Luna is the only one getting wrecked while she fakes having backup just so no one else stresses out. He asks why she's crying, but Luna just brushes it off, even though Rick knows exactly what's up and hates that she won't just lean on him. Is she seriously trying to do all this alone? Luna's trying to handle everything by herself, but that's just not gonna work. If this goes down again, she's gonna be stuck dealing with everything all by herself, so he's waiting for her to finally speak up and ask for backup instead of him stepping. Rick was hyped that she's already a boss at their age, but Luna got real and said she had to take over because her dad died and her mom got super sick. Rick pulled her in close, knowing she could have just dumped the work on someone else. But she didn't because she's actually super loyal to the Moon's Drop Trading Company. Just like her dad, she dreamed of starting a company that brought cool gear and tasty food to the town just to see everyone smile. She can't lose focus on her mission because it means everything to her, and Rick really wished he could have met her dad to find out what kind of guy he was. Zaji was a super chill dad, but he was a total beast when it came to business, teaching Luna that respecting her customers and her team was way more important than just making a sale. Look, business only works because of the buyers, the makers, and the merchants who bring them both together. Rick finally gets it. Her dad's big lesson was to put the customers first and stop being a lone wolf so they can all work together, right? They're not doing this solo. They're taking them on as a team. He's never had anyone in his life, so seeing her with a whole squad of friends in this town makes him super jealous. Hearing that, it finally clicked for Luna that she'd totally misunderstood her dad this whole time. Rick asks what she's gonna do now, and even if it's already way too late, he's still waiting for her answer. But she's still going to put her pride aside and ask everyone to help her find a way to fix this together. She's finally decided to trust her squad, so Rick is jumping in to help her out too. Luna started worrying if this was actually okay since he wasn't part of the company. But Rick just shut her up by putting a finger to her lips. He thinks that's more than enough reason to step up and help out. Luna turns bright red and looks away, feeling bad for leaning on him so much. But he totally ignores her excuses and tells her to just be real with him. Honestly, she's just trying to save the business her dad worked so hard to build. She asks him to lend her his power, and obviously, he's totally down for it. The Whales Trading Company has been playing dirty and he's going to make them pay. But then it hits him. He finally knows where they're hiding and how close she actually is. He just grabbed her and pulled her into a hug without even thinking. But now he's totally freaking out and wondering how he ever managed to talk to her normally before this. They both looked away, feeling super awkward, and Luna was just about to ask the squad for help, but something stopped her right then. Rick's got one thing he needs to handle first, as long as she's cool with it. He told her to keep her mouth shut about his next move, and though Luna was confused at first, she turned bright red once her mind started racing. She promised to stay quiet no matter what. He heads over to the salt jars and fires up his Genesis magic, figuring out that El Dorado's salt tastes so bad because it's packed with magnesium chloride, meaning everyone has just been eating nagari. So he just pictures the ocean water getting pulled right into the salt fields. Then they let the sun and wind dry it out using that classic salt-making style. That's gonna give us some top-tier salt that tastes absolutely amazing. Luna asks what he's up to, but instead of answering, he just tells her to give the salt a taste. She didn't even hesitate and did exactly what she was told. She was totally blown away by how good it tasted, with zero bitterness, and she'd never had salt this amazing in her entire life. Rick's super hyped and asks her to try another snack, which is just a fresh cucumber topped with that same salt from before. Luna took a bite and her face totally lit up because it was legit the best thing she's ever tasted in her whole life. Boom! The plan worked out perfectly. Rick figured that instead of just talking about the new salt, he'd let people taste it first, and Luna thought his plan to serve samples before selling it was a total pro move. He basically just copied a trick from his past life. But to these people, it's a total game changer. Now he just has to enchant the rest of the jars, while Luna feels super bad for dumping all the work on him and not helping out at all. Rick says it's no big deal since they already had the materials, so he barely used any mana instead of wasting days on it, and Luna's just super relieved she could actually help him out. Rick pumped his fist and told Luna she's the only one who can pull this off, and it totally worked because she promised to give it her all. But their vibe was totally ruined when Thomas suddenly showed up with some crazy news from outside the city that Luna needed to hear. He found out from a farmer that the Whales Trading Company brought some shady thugs to their meeting and bullied him into selling his stuff for a total rip-off price. It was honestly a total joke and a huge insult to the creators. But let's be real, even if people knew the truth, they'd probably still just go for the cheaper option anyway. Real merchants who know the truth would never do business like this. Luna feels exactly the same way. She feels like she'd be betraying everything her dad's Moondrop company stands for. She thanked Thomas for the intel, and even though this wasn't the kind of talk that wins popularity contests, it just made her even more fired up to win. Plus, she just came up with a total genius plan. Karen's food shop was handing out free samples of their fresh, salty, stir-fried veggies. The customers take a bite and totally love it. Those sweet veggies and that top-tier salt are seriously on another level. Everyone is hyped and giving it crazy high praise. Nobody ever thought. Luna says the salt tasting was all Rick's idea, and they're doing it to make sure all those farm-fresh veggies don't go to waste. There's only 24 hours left on the clock before the election is finally over. All right, it's time for the comeback to start, so they're heading back to hit those shops one more time. The Whales Trading Company tried to kick Moondrop out of business by selling the same stuff for way cheaper. But Rick fought back by using holy magic to make top-tier salt and used. He and Luna hit the shops again to get them to test out the new salt, and everything seemed to be going perfectly. At least, that's what he thought. Maris screamed that they were in huge trouble, so Luna and Rick raced over to find out what was going on. Maris was glowing because the reviews were fire and the salt vanished from the shelves, and soon all the shopkeepers showed up hyped to announce they were completely sold out too. Luna was so happy she actually started tearing up. If this blows up in the cells, they can finally pay off their debt and even use the hype to win the election. Right then, the three idiots showed up asking what all the noise was about, looking like they'd totally lost it just because they couldn't find any good loot anymore. First, they bullied the greengrocer yesterday, and now this. So Luna's wondering what they're after while Gonza thinks she's just gonna quit tomorrow's election. Luna told him not to sweat it, but Gonza just laughed in her face, thinking she was acting tough while being 100% sure their product was a total flop. She's buried in debt with a mountain of unsold stock, so why doesn't she just quit the election and hand her salt over to the Whales Trading Company, as long as they agree to be their servants? The two guys behind him started cracking up, knowing that's exactly how their brother Gonza rolls. The shopkeepers were like, "What are you even talking about?" and told them they only came to Luna because they were completely sold out of salt. Another shopkeeper chimed in to agree. Gonza just laughed at how stupid they were, thinking it was a total no-brainer that people would buy the same stuff for 2 silver coins less, and he wondered if these customers were, man, they're actually blaming the customers for their own mess, and just like Rick thought, these guys are total trash. Luna was totally shocked by how they were treating the customers and wondered if these guys were even legit members of the Merchants Guild. Gonza just laughed, bragging that the Whales Company is the only reason prices aren't sky-high for stuff like salt, while Luna questioned if it was really a crime to charge more for better quality goods. She tells him the customers are the ones who choose, and she's positive her salt tastes way better. Gonza just rolls his eyes and laughs. He thinks she's hilarious for acting. Luna hooks him up and pours some salt right into his hand, so Gonza checks out the tiny grains and wonders if they'll actually do anything. But one quick lick later, his mind is totally umta. The other two finally tried the salt and realized it wasn't bitter at all, making Dorland's salt look like total trash, while Rick just smirked as the flavor forced them to admit the truth. They were totally shocked by how good it actually tasted and wondered where on earth this stuff even came from. Gonza squeezed his fist and grabbed a block, thinking that if this salt wasn't here, all his problems would just disappear. Luna put her life on the line to protect the salt wagon, but Gonza was ready to take her out too, until Rick stepped in to shut that down. He shut him down with Class 2 windshield creation holy magic before he could even throw that block. Gonza's two goons just laughed. They knew magic wouldn't do a thing to stop this. Nobody can handle their big brother's raw power. Rick quickly checked Gonza. He's wondering why he's suddenly jumping into this since it's super risky. But Gonza says their boss Whales actually has a specific job for them to do. They're gonna take out anyone standing in the Whale Trading Company's way, and that means Salt and that brat Luna are next on the list. He didn't care if it was against the law. He was gonna handle things exactly how he wanted. He's actually taken out way too many people, but he still gets to walk around town totally free just because Whales is protecting him. Everyone in the crowd started looking around all nervous, wondering if he was actually for real. Rick was stressed that if these thugs kept acting crazy, everyone would think Whales was actually teaming up with the soldiers, so there was no way they could let him win. Rick's barrier was taking a total beating from Gonza's block, and he was definitely starting to struggle. Gonza just smirks and says he's gonna regret ever picking this fight because he's about to get wrecked. So Rick tells Luna to run while she can, but she's not going anywhere. If he gets hurt, it's totally on her, so she can't just ditch him and bolt. Is she actually planning to go down with him? He's completely stuck on what? Believe it or not, his strength stat is actually lower than Gonza's. Even with his high skill ranks, he's just no match for that kind of raw strength. Since things are getting desperate, he's busting out his insane sacred strength magic, and even though some magic-boosted guys have actually beaten Gonza before, this is still a massive problem. This guy has literally never lost a test of raw power, so he's way out of the league of some random hero party sidekicks. Those two goons were making fun of Rick for not... Look, magic would end this fight in a heartbeat, but if this idiot really wants to do it the hard way, then fine. Rick's got way too much pride to use magic, so he just grabs Gonza's hands and overpowers him with nothing but raw strength. The two minions just laughed at him, thinking he was a total moron for trying to block with his bare hands, while Gonza smirked, ready to absolutely crush Rick with his insane strength. Rick fights back hard, and even though Gonza is built like a tank, he's not letting his skinny arms stop him from winning. He messed with the grocer, ruined his magic salt, and even tried to kill Luna, so now he's gonna crush this meathead's ego and make him taste total defeat. He starts off by using Creation Holy Magic to craft Skill Enhancement A. Next, he buffs his own skills and fires off a Class 4 holy spell called Create Genesis, sending his power level straight to the moon. Gonza gets shoved back, his arms shaking as he realizes Rick actually powered up the skill itself, even though that's supposed to be impossible. Rick squeezed his hands tight, clearly obsessed with showing off just how strong he really is. Too bad for him, because he's totally losing this test of strength, and Gonza can't believe his huge muscles are getting wrecked by those skinny little arms. Rick marches forward and shoves Gonza back, showing he's clearly the stronger one. And since those huge muscles are just for show, he's about to pay for putting Luna. Rick cocked back his fist ready to throw down, and slammed a heavy fist right into Gonza's gut. He face-planted hard into the dirt, and his goons had to drag him away, totally shocked that some random kid actually beat him. They yelled that they were telling Wales everything, and that Rick... Luna starts apologizing for being a burden again, but Rick shuts that down fast, saying she's the only reason he can even use his full strength. Man, the power of love is no joke, watching them act all mushy and romantic together. The shopkeepers were totally jealous and started teasing them, making both of them blush like crazy. Back at the Wales Trading Company, Wales is giving Gonza a massive earful. He apologized and said he only lost because Rick's power spiked out of nowhere, but Wales wasn't even mad about the fight. He was actually fuming because Gonza was telling everyone he killed. Gonza froze up and tried to explain he was just trying to flex Wales's power, but Wales shut him down by slamming his fist on his chair, calling him a total idiot for doing something so pointless. Who's gonna vote for a company that literally brags about killing people? Meanwhile, Noise was over there overthinking everything. Then, out of nowhere, Moon's drop revealed a brand new salt. Wales is totally losing it because the election is tomorrow and he definitely didn't see these two massive surprises coming. He got even more annoyed when he heard the news that Wales and Luna were actually tied in the polls. Noise promised the rumors wouldn't spread much since they were almost out of time, and the Moon's Drop Company's only real weapon is that salt. With all the gear and help the Wales Trading Company has given the town, they've totally outdone their rivals, so it's honestly wild that they're losing this badly. Wales screamed that he wasn't taking any chances. He wanted a win that was 100% guaranteed. Noise promised him that Naval already handled the vote, and they've got a foolproof plan to make sure he wins no matter what. Wales asked what kind of world this actually was. Noise breaks down the plan, and Wales just starts grinning because he knows this strategy is totally foolproof. But what if he loses by some crazy fluke? Noise just gives him a confident smirk because he's already got a backup plan ready for that exact situation. Honestly, crazy accidents happen all the time in this world without any warning at all. Election day was finally here, and even though Rick wished he could have voted too, he just had to deal with it. Karen and Daigo both gave their votes to Luna, and he was seriously grateful for the backup. Thomas was right there with the rest of the crew too. Over 90% of Zurich is actually showing up to vote. So you know this is the one election everyone's obsessed with. Karen tells Rick that all the votes are being counted inside that guarded building, and since the whole thing feels super sketchy, he decides to head in and check it out. He triggered his detection skill and got a clear look at everything inside the building. He spots a guy by the ballot box who looks like the election supervisor, and since Noise and Naval are right there with him, you just know they're cooking up something totally shady. That's when he spots it. There are actually 2 ballot boxes. Wait, no way. He uses his detection skill to peek inside the box and catches them red-handed, realizing they're using the most basic cheating trick ever. But he snapped back too, and now he's standing right there on the platform with Wales. Wales gets right in her face and tells her she's going down, saying she should have just let him lead from the start. But Luna fires back that she's got her squad behind her, and she's definitely winning this to build a city where everyone can live in peace. Wales just smirked at her. He thought she had some serious guts. He figured she should save that talk for when she actually wins the rep spot. But as long as he's around, even the super sweet Luna is totally disgusted by how these big companies operate. Especially since this city has 0 rules compared to Japan, letting the powerful people do whatever they want. Luna's gotta win this if they want to clean up the system for good. Rick's just hoping the voters don't get distracted and actually think about the future. Now, he snapped back to reality when someone nearby shouted that Captain Neld was finally showing up, who turns out to be Naval's dad and the guy running the whole election. Neld knows everyone is dying to hear the results, but he tells them to hang tight while they finally start counting. This is a total disaster because they have no clue how many people here are actually under Wales's control. If those votes get counted in that locked room, Luna is totally finished, so they've got to stop it no matter what. Rick raised his hand and suggested counting them right then and there so everyone could see the results and get hyped, which made Wales and Neld totally freak out. They told him to stop being ridiculous because the votes are always counted in the back while everyone stays put, snapping that outsiders should just shut up. But Rick couldn't help but wonder why they, making it impossible to cheat. But Wales snapped and yelled that they were just making up total lies. Think he's bluffing? Rick's got the receipts, and he's about to make them expose the truth in front of everyone. Everyone's totally on board with Rick's idea, and even that dummy Gonza is hyped, shouting for Wales to show off his win right then and there. Luna's totally down for it, so Rick just smirks and wonders how a whale would handle a situation like this. Wales grit his teeth, looking like he was about to totally snap from pure rage. He screamed that he'd never heard of counting votes like that, since they've always done it in the back room, and there's absolutely no reason to change it now. Wait, did he seriously say always? Rick has no clue how long Wales has even been in Zurich, but that place is basically a playground for scammers, and besides, that's totally different from the story he told yesterday. He remembers promising to hear everyone out, try new things, and finally get this stuck city of Zurich moving again. Everyone wants the votes counted right here, so he needs to stop sticking to the old ways and actually keep his promise. Isn't it time to finally try something new? Wales snapped that an outsider like him should keep his mouth shut, then ordered Neld to rush the ballot box to the back and start counting right now. The crowd started whispering and wondering if he was hiding a secret, so Noise told him to just play along since they were using the ballot box anyway. Since there's only one ballot box for the people, he's feeling super hyped because he's definitely going to be the new representative. Wales flashed a smug grin and cleared his throat, and he actually gave them exactly what they asked for. Rick caught him right where he wanted, just like he planned. Wales told Neld to grab the box, realizing that even though he wanted to wait for the election to change things, he might just be stuck in Zurich's old ways. They had to settle the score right in front of the crowd, and Neld's hands were shaking as he finally pulled out the box. Wales thinks he's already won, but Rick isn't having it and shuts him down with some Class 2 whirlwind magic. Neld trips up and sends that box flying right off the platform. Everyone grabbed the ballots off the ground and realized something was super sketchy when they saw Wales's name on every single one. Even more ballots come raining down to the ground. They cracked it open and every single slip said Wales, so someone yelled out asking if anyone even had a vote for Luna. But the whole crowd just went dead silent. Does that mean every single vote in? Gotcha! A guard pulls out the real ballot box and the crowd starts losing it. Did this guy really think he could lie his way into being Zurich's representative? Wales tried to throw Neld under the bus, but Neld totally denied it. Wales already knew he was stuffing the box with fake votes because his son, Naval, was the one who sent it. Maris whipped around to Naval, looking totally shocked and super confused. Wales kept acting like he had no clue, swearing he'd never even be seen with people like that. But the people weren't buying his garbage for a single second. So he shouted out for Noise. They just started chucking in smoke bombs everywhere. He's covering their escape, but Noise is way too pro at this, and now Rick is seriously wondering who this guy really is. The guards instantly started searching the place and headed straight for Neld. They screamed that they were forced into it, so he looked at Naval, worried things would only get worse, but Naval just shook his head because he didn't even care anymore. He looked at Mary's and told her he finally remembered the huge mission he swore to follow, and there was no way he was going to forget it now. It's time for them to finally pay for everything they've done. Just like that, they were totally busted and hauled off to jail. This time they're doing the real count right in front of the whole crowd to keep things legit. With the vote finally being fair, Zurich officially crowned its brand new leader. With a massive 92.8% turnout, the final results were 2,128 to 2,512. Luna just won the election, and now she's officially the one representing the whole city. She totally crushed Wales and then dove into Rick's arms, hyped that they officially won the election. She was super grateful because she knew she couldn't have won without him. But Rick stops her right there, saying he barely did anything and that an awesome girl like her was always meant to be. Ever since they met, he's done nothing but look out for her. And while she's super thankful, an old lady in the back starts smiling at them and makes Rick blush like crazy. She knows Loon is hyped to be the rep, but she thinks they should save the rest for when they're finally alone. These guys are giving Rick the ultimate death stare, so the two of them quickly pull apart while Luna bolts for home, using her mom as a total excuse to bail. She tried to make a break for it, but they stopped her to finish the paperwork, and just like that, the election was officially over. Over at the Wales Trading Company, Wales was losing his mind and cursing everyone out because every single one of them totally failed him. He asked Noise if everything was ready, making it clear that after paying him so much, he better not mess this up. That brat Rick is the one who crushed those fake bandits and the guards, and now he's totally gonna take out him and Luna together. He's gonna wreck the Moon's Drop Trading Company first, and then he's gonna leave them feeling totally hopeless. Noise just stood there with a smug grin, watching Wales go absolutely berserk. Wales is a total psycho, laughing like a madman while clutching a magic tool that'll burn the entire Moon's Drop Trading Company to the ground in an instant. The whole place is about to be burned to the ground, but he doesn't care at all. So Noise just stays silent because he knows sticking with this psycho will only get him destroyed too. But honestly, that's totally fine. You're never gonna be bored with this guy around because he's definitely not looking for a world that's peaceful and quiet. Wales is planning to kidnap Luna and keep her all to himself like his own personal toy. He's gonna put her through absolute hell, and the second she's not useful anymore, he'll just toss her aside like garbage. That's the only way she'll ever be forgiven. And Noise realized this guy is straight up insane. Fine, he's just gonna roll with this total insanity. He's just gotta make sure he doesn't bore the guy. Because if he actually does it, he's totally gonna end him. In the fantasy world of El Dorado, Rick finally remembers his past life and decides he's totally done with his toxic hero party and annoying family. So he starts acting out just to get himself kicked out on purpose. He and his mom escaped the Grandine slums to find her family in Jilk, and after he saved a merchant named Luna from a bandit attack on the road, they finally made it safely to the city of Zurich. While the boss was away, Wales was running the city and started pulling every dirty trick he could to sabotage Luna's Moon's Drop Trading Company. The other candidates tried to make a move, but Rick totally shut them down with his Genesis holy magic. On election day, they caught whales cheating exactly like they planned, and Luna, the former leader's daughter, ended up winning the whole thing. Rick gave Luna another big shout-out, and she was quick to say thanks. She asks if he's been waiting for her, and he totally has, because Wales is still out there somewhere. She bowed and apologized for the trouble, but Rick told her it's not her fault since he's just doing his own thing. Luna was scratching her head over where the whales vanished to, and while Rick didn't have a clue, he did have one theory. He's out for revenge against both of them, and Luna's face completely twists in terror the moment she hears it. No wonder she looks totally terrified. She barely survived her trip from Dorland to Zurich. With the whales gone, there's no telling when that gang will attack again. But the one thing he can actually do for her is keep her safe. He asked her to stay the night, and she was so shocked she practically died right there. Her face turns bright red as her mind starts racing, while Rick just stands there without a single clue what she's thinking. He figured they should stick together, because it was way too dangerous for her to be out there on her own. Luna started acting all awkward, explaining she doesn't hate the idea, but since they literally just met, it feels way too soon. Rick grabs her shoulders, knowing she's just trying not to be a burden, but since this is literally life or death, he's stepping up to make sure nobody ever hurts Luna again. He insisted she follow him right now without saying a single word. Luna took a nervous gulp and finally said she was in. She's down to go, but she asks for a quick minute to wash up first. Rick is about to say yes, but then it hits him. Even with his detection skill active, he's totally cool with her coming over exactly how she is, but she refuses because she's a total sweaty mess from all that election stress. Rick totally gets her, but he says they need to head to his place first, making Luna turn bright red because she thinks he's being super bold. The town just got a brand new leader, and it's a total game changer, so now Rick is doing everything he can to win her over. But it turns out he's actually got a massive favor to ask her. Luna was totally shocked he wanted to use appraisal on her, but Rick explained he just needed to see her stats to be safe. But if she's not into it, he's definitely not gonna do it. Luna figured it was cool since he'd learn all the fun stuff in bed later anyway. Do 15-year-olds really have better love lives than the person watching this? Anyway, Rick didn't catch what she said, so he just threw out a compliment right away. He totally froze when her status window popped up, because everything looked normal until he saw that Closet Perv title. Seriously, what was that even about? But should he really be telling her the truth? One line out. The input provided is one block of text. I will provide one block of text. Let's try to capture the sparkling eyes and the "do skills even glitch out?" He can't see the super serious Luna being a total creep, so he apologizes and asks to check her stats one more time. Luna was totally down for it, and since he knew he wasn't seeing things earlier, he figured he could just tell her the truth, right? One of her titles is literally Closet Perv, proving that the quiet ones always have the dirtiest thoughts. But since he can't actually say that out loud, he just uses his appraisal skill again. And yeah, it's still right there as clear as day, and he has no clue how he's even gonna tell her. But then it hits him. Luna looks totally innocent, but she's actually hiding some seriously wild thoughts in her head. This is honestly the best. And he's definitely gonna start seeing her in a whole new way now since they look so perfect together. But he totally flips out when Luna suddenly demands to know her. She's only level 8 right now with a max of 100, so she's got a ton of room to grow. Plus, there's a mysterious title with question marks that'll probably unlock once she hits a secret goal. He asks if she can use holy magic, but she says she's never cast a spell in her life, which is super weird because her status screen says she totally can. He told her to focus all her power into her palm and chant a high-level healing spell. But Luna was just like, "Wait, How do I even do that? Rick tells her to focus all her energy into her hand, and Luna actually pulls it off, casting Enchanted High Heal, a crazy strong Class 1 healing spell. But just like that, it didn't even do a thing. She turned bright red and begged Rick not to laugh, so he quickly waved his hands and promised he'd stay serious. It's her first time, so it's totally fine that she's struggling, but she'll definitely master it with practice. Even though Luna just sighed because she really wanted to be useful and asked if there was anything else she could do, Rick didn't even hesitate to say that was everything. There's no way he can tell her she has a closet pervert title, and he's low-key stressing over her affection level because if he misreads it and she ends, appraisal is honestly such a broken skill since he can see everyone's stats, so Rick begs her to keep it a secret before someone tries to take advantage of him. She swears she'll keep the secret even if it kills her, but Rick just waves his hand and tells her it's totally fine to talk if her life is actually on the line. Just then, he picked up the sound of wails and some loud noise close by. It was only about 900 meters away, sitting right to the west-southwest of where they were. But they aren't even heading in their direction. They're charging straight toward the Moon's Drop Trading Company. He figured they were after Luna, thinking they'd take her out just to steal her spot as the representative. They're definitely plotting something against the shop. And since there are 0 cameras or security like back in Japan, he knows he can't just sit back and let them use these blind spots to. He tells Luna it looks like Wales and his crew are heading straight for the Moon's Drop Trading Company. He's heading out to catch those two right now, but Luna is dead set on tagging along. If they're planning to mess with the company, there's no way she's just gonna sit back and watch. Plus, her mom is right there at the shop too. Wait, are they trying to split them up? Wales's crew might jump Luna if she's solo, so he's gotta stay right by her side. He finally let her tag along, but warned her she better stay right by his side. He asked if he could carry her again, and she was totally down for it. With her okay, he scooped her up and went full throttle using Class 2. He unleashes a massive spinning storm of pure holy magic. Meanwhile, Wales was going absolutely wild over at the Moon's Drop Trading Company. He used the magic tool Noise gave him to burn everything to the ground. He's convinced that as long as he's got that person's power backing him up, he can always make a massive comeback. Noise barked at him to back off. He uses the flamestone to set off a massive explosion. Rick's sprinting at full speed with Luna in his arms, just praying he isn't too late. Right when Wales was about to blow everything up with the flamestone, Rick totally clutched it, blocking the hit with his Class 2 windshield magic. The second he landed, he put Luna down and asked Wales what he was about to do to that house. Wales was totally blindsided, wondering where they even popped out from, while Rick stepped up to protect Luna as she demanded to know why Wales would do something so messed up. Who even cares why? The reason is super obvious. They just got on his bad side. Wales clicked his tongue, feeling totally sick watching her and her dad Zaji pretend to be such good people. That's exactly why he took him out. But now the daughter is starting to interfere too, and Luna is totally frozen because she just heard him admit to getting rid of her own father. Whale just let out a snicker, knowing he was totally right. He was standing in his way of becoming the representative, so he just made him disappear. He made it look like a random bandit attack to take him out, but she actually managed to survive. Rick had a hunch, but it turns out Wales really was the one who set up the bandit attack, and he's the guy who killed Zaji too. Luna squeezed her fist tight and started screaming her head off at the Wales. She was crying her eyes out, but Wales just laughed harder and promised to keep her as his slave forever. She told him he was crazy because there was no way she'd ever be a slave to the guy who murdered her dad. Seriously, how messed up can this guy actually be? Suddenly, a dagger swipes at Rick's side, but he reacts just in time and knocks it away. Noise was the one who actually threw it. Wales was just acting wild to distract them while Noise launched a sneak attack, So Rick pulled Luna behind him and fired off magic with his left hand. Throwing weapons? Man, what a pain, so he decides to shut up the noise first. Rick uses appraisal and finds out Noise is actually an assassin, which is basically a pro at killing people in the shadows. And between his rare magic item skill and those crazy stats, Rick knows he can't take this guy lightly. Blocking those blades with magic is way too risky, so he decides to end this up close and fast. But right then, he hears the sound of even more daggers flying his way. Rick blocks the hit, and since he can't get close, he decides to blast him with long-range magic instead. But before he can even react, Noise is already chucking more daggers, and man, his aim is such a headache. The only way out of this might be some creation holy magic. He knows that letting that power loose in the city would be a total disaster, so he can't just use it whenever he wants. Even though his magic could totally wreck Noise in a fair fight, that creation holy magic is just way too insane. Noise was blown away that Rick didn't have a single scratch on him. It's no wonder his goons totally failed to take out Luna. Rick just smirked and told him he really shouldn't be acting tough right now, and Wales totally agreed because even one tiny scratch would mean game over, leaving Rick super confused while Noise side realized their master is a... Rick stared at the dagger in total shock, wondering if that thing was actually coated in poison. Those daggers are actually coated in venom from the legendary Orochi, a beast so dangerous only top-tier hunters can take it down, and even a tiny scratch will leave him totally paralyzed. One tiny mistake and it's game over for Rick, especially since he's got zero ways to fix himself right now. To fix these status effects, he needs at least Class 6 Holy Magic, and while he could try making a custom spell with creation magic, he's way too low on mana to pull it off. If he just had a paralysis resistance skill, he'd actually have a chance to fight back. Noise smirked and mocked Rick for getting sloppy, while Rick cursed under his breath as he struggled to block the non-stop rain of daggers. He had to see if his shield actually worked, so he cast a rank 2 wind spell, but a dagger ripped right through it. Rick blocks the hit instantly, but Noise just pulls out even more daggers and tells him he's lucky he didn't get skewered since his shield is already broken. Luck? Not even close. Rick moved like he'd already been hit, desperately trying to hide behind his shield, but this proves it. Magic shields are totally useless against that move. Luna apologized for tagging along, but Rick just gave her a confident smile and told her he'd block those daggers easily, so she had nothing to worry about. He's got Luna right behind him and he's her only shield, so he's got to stand tall and make sure she never sees him break. If he keeps blocking like this, Noise is totally gonna run out of daggers, so he just needs to hang in there a bit longer. But right when he thinks he's winning, a woman heard a noise and stepped out of an alley right into the middle of the mess, and Rick suddenly realized he totally messed up because they're still in the heart of the city. She bolted away in pure terror, screaming at the top of her lungs for someone to save her. Noise chucks a dagger right at her, and Luna lunges to stop it, but she's definitely gonna get hurt. Rick dives right in front of her to knock that dagger away. A second dagger was hiding right in the shadow of the first one, and it caught him straight in the side. Wales starts laughing like a total maniac because he finally landed a hit and thinks it's game over. But Rick just clutches his side and refuses to go down that easily. But out of nowhere, his legs just gave out and he couldn't move a muscle, so Luna rushed straight to his side. He's slumped on the ground, screaming for her to run while he hurls another dagger. This time, the attack heads straight for Luna to stop her in her tracks. The lady managed to escape while screaming for help, but Noise just let her go because they had to finish the job here first. Rick struggled with all his might to force his body to move, because if he didn't, both he and Luna were dead meat. Noise laughed, totally shocked the guy was still moving, and honestly, you gotta respect that kind of heart. Wales stomped over and crushed his face under his boot, totally pissed that he ruined his plan to become the representative. He's fallen so low that he's basically just a pest now, and you've got to wipe out pests to save the world. He winds up and boots Rick right in the gut, leaving him lying there to take every single blow. Is this really how it ends? There's gotta be some kind of spell he can pull out. He's still soaking up mana, so he can totally keep using his magic. He thinks about using a shield, but that would leave Luna wide open, and he can't even fire back because his aim is totally trashed right now. If he doesn't step up, Luna is going to get caught in the crossfire, and he's not letting that happen, especially since his magic and skills are totally useless against these sounds anyway. Luna barely manages to call out to Rick, begging him to reach out his hand. But when Wales hears her, he stops stomping on Rick and turns his attention right toward her as he remembers how much. He yanks her hair and tells Rick that getting close to her was his biggest mistake, and now she has to watch him die. Let's be real, if Rick never met Luna, he wouldn't have ended up getting his face stomped or his stomach kicked. But Luna is honestly the sweetest person ever, always helping others and getting embarrassed over literally anything. They haven't known each other long, but she's one of the only people who actually gets how he thinks, so his mind is already made up. There was absolutely no way he was gonna let this go down. Wales just laughed, calling Rick a total fake who deserved to die, so he ordered Noise to finish him off, and Noise was more than happy to whip out his dagger and get to work. He walked over to Rick and shook his head, because if Rick didn't have something to protect, Noise totally would have lost. Rick cursed in frustration, knowing he'd never lose to some Wales or Noise if he wasn't totally paralyzed. Wales yanked Luna's hair even harder and told her she'd better not look away. If only she hadn't tried to save that woman earlier. Actually, if she just hadn't tried to become the city's leader, she wouldn't be in this mess. Rick would still be alive if she hadn't totally ruined his life. He spots Luna crying her eyes out and groaning in total pain. This made Rick's face twist into a look of pure rage. They really dared to make her cry? He's never letting this slide, and even if he goes down, he's taking both of them straight to hell with him. Rick throws his hand up, trying to fire off his Class 3 Flame Arrow Creation Holy Magic. He's dead set on burning every single cell in Noise's body until they're nothing but ash. Noise pointed his dagger right at his own hand and asked him what he was even doing. He's definitely not gonna let him act up or cause any trouble. Just like that, he drives the blade straight into Rick's wrist, making him let out a massive groan from the pain. He gets absolutely rocked by a second attack. He's still totally frozen from that first hit, and at this rate, he won't even be able to twitch a finger. He's totally dead meat next time, and Noise definitely caught the look on his face. He asked if he gets scared of dying after taking so many lives, which is honestly just a joke. He slashes Rick's cheek with the dagger, and now Rick's gotta make a move. He's gotta use his head and he's gotta do it fast. He's gotta act fast before that paralyzing poison spreads through his whole body. Hold on, paralyzing poison? It finally clicks that he's got that stuff pumping through his body right this second. Making items and boosting skills is way cheaper on mana if he has a catalyst, so he figures he can just use the paralysis poison inside his own body to get it done. Wales tells Noise to hurry up and end Rick just to crush Luna's spirit. Noise usually loves playing with victims who are paralyzed and can't fight back, but they're right in the middle of the city where anyone could jump in and ruin his fun. He decides to follow Wales's orders, but if Rick grabs that dagger, he's a goner and Luna is a slave, and there's no way he's letting that go down. He did it all using his insane creation magic. He just unlocked a brand new skill to resist paralysis. Noise smirks and tries to stab him, but Rick catches the blade with his bare hand. Noise was totally losing it because that guy shouldn't be able to move his arm. But whatever, this next hit is gonna leave him paralyzed all over again. Rick shot him a massive death stare, but things were about to get way worse. That paralyzing poison? Yeah, it's totally useless now. He snatched the dagger and slammed it right into Noise's arm. He screams out in total agony, which is insane because he was literally just paralyzed. Rick stood right back up and told him that the paralysis poison just wore off. He checked his stats and saw his creation magic level had jumped, realizing that at Class 5, he could finally craft a skill to block paralysis. That was way too close, and he gets the chills just thinking about what would have happened if he failed. The paralysis finally shut up all that noise, so now the only thing left is the whales. Whales told him to stay put, but he's the one who totally froze when Rick just kept on going. He grabs Luna's chin and warns Rick to freeze or else, but why should Rick be scared of a guy who isn't even armed? He's dying to wreck the jerk who stomped. Rick warned Whales to let Luna go before he did something crazy, but Whales just ignored him and bragged that he's the one calling the shots now. His hands are shaking like crazy, but he's wide open and totally defenseless, so Rick knows he's got this. He hurls a dagger straight at Whales, slicing him right across the stomach. Whales is screaming his head off, but isn't he being a total drama queen over a tiny bit of blood? The whale screamed in pain and collapsed from the paralyzing poison, finally letting Luna go. Oh man, she's falling fast and she's totally gonna hit the ground. Rick lunged forward and caught her right in his arms. Man, that was way too close, and he's just so glad he made it in time, because if he lost the girl in his arms right now, his whole world would basically fall apart. Rick uses Class 3 healing magic to fix Luna's cut, and when she groans and tries to apologize, he tells her not to sweat it since he chose to do it himself. Luna was sobbing, saying that if she'd never met him, this nightmare wouldn't even be happening. Even in a crazy situation like this, she's still only thinking about everyone else. And since she'd totally blame herself if anyone got hurt, he knows regular words won't cut it. And in this world, power is everything, but it's crawling with fake heroes who act like saints while secretly being total villains. But he was totally powerless there, so he couldn't even touch those villains. Luna was sure he was a total beast, so Rick just flashed a grin and kept right on with his story. He showed up in this world only to find even more people abusing their power, making him realize that things are the same everywhere he goes. And after hearing all that, Luna started wondering what he actually... Rick stayed quiet, thinking back to how his dad and half-brother treated him like trash, and even though some people were okay, he felt like he didn't truly vibe with anyone. Right in the middle of all that, he finally found someone who actually thought just like him. Luna spoke up and asked who that person even was. Her eyes went wide as he pulled her into a super tight hug. She's the one who said it, so if she ever admits she wishes they never met, it would totally crush him. He's decided he wants Luna right by his side from here on out. He wants her to finally get to know him, and he's definitely not letting a guy like Whales pull them apart. Luna starts tearing up, so happy she met Rick that she never wants to let him go. She ripped herself away from his grip and immediately unleashed Class 1. He blasts his injury with high-level healing magic and the pain totally vanishes. She's still a total burden for now, but at least she can pull this off. The wound is already closed, and seeing Class 1 magic heal that fast just proves how insane divine magic really is. Rick grabbed her hand and started geeking out over how incredible she is now that she's finally mastered her magic. He was in total agony, but she totally saved his life by healing those nasty With those words, Rick is fired up to keep pushing forward no matter what kind of enemy shows up next. Luna gave Rick a massive smile to thank him for the help, and honestly, she looked totally gorgeous. She looks way better when she's smiling, and Rick made a silent vow that he'd never let her look sad ever again. Back at the Grand Dine Empire, Sasha from the Heroes Party shows up, and Chancellor Marius instantly realizes that Heinz totally failed his third dungeon raid. Even with a holy magic user on the team, they're getting wrecked on floors the old crew cleared easily and are forced to run for it. She knelt before Emperor Exiled von Grandane and told him straight up that Rick was a massive part of why Heinz's hero party actually succeeded. Marius was totally shocked because the rumors were a lie, so he asked where Rick was, and Sasha told him the guy got kicked out of his party and his noble family and is now staying in Zurich in the Jilk commercial nation where his mom grew up. She thinks losing a genius like him to another country would be a huge mistake. But Marius looks the emperor in the eye and says he heard the guy was actually kicked out for selling the empire's dough. Sasha stood up for Rick and swore he'd never do something like that. But she quickly apologized when she realized the emperor was right there, while Marius turned to Exiled to ask what their next move. He figured he'd get his answer the second their blades finally clashed. So Marius sends in Waltz, the guy who's ranked number 3 in the whole Imperial Intelligence Division. Back in Zurich, Wales and Noise got totally busted along with a bunch of the guards. With the whole mess finally cleared up, life in Zurich went right back to normal. 10 days later, Rick's just chilling on his bed casting magic on salt jars, and he decides he's done using his creation powers for anything else. He was so desperate to save Luna that he actually summoned salt from his old world, but trying to make anything else would totally drain his time and mana. If he keeps showing off his crazy inventions, he's just asking for trouble from greedy nobles who'll try to boss him around. So he decides to only use his creation magic But the moment Noise hit him with that paralysis poison, he totally freaked out and lost his cool. If he had more mana and a higher creation magic rank, he could have just made his own healing spells and resistance skills without needing any special items. Right now, he's focused on ranking up his creation magic and boosting his mana, so he's looking for a prime hunting ground to level up as fast as possible. Right as he walks out of his room, he's holding a whole box of salt. Mary spilled the beans that Luna visited him even with her crazy schedule. But Luna played it cool and lied that she was just checking on Karen's shop. Mary giggled, totally knowing Luna only showed up because she was worried about Rick, so she decided to back off and give them some space. Rick walks over to Luna and thanks her for caring, but he's totally back to his old self now. Regular support magic couldn't handle this much damage, but her holy magic totally saved the day, and she's just stoked she could actually help out. But even then, she couldn't stop thinking that everything would be way easier if she was just better at magic. It looks like she was also starting to feel like her power just wasn't enough. Luna turned away with a bright red face, apologizing for being such a downer in front of the shop while they watched Mary's welcome the customers. Zurich's shops are blowing up thanks to Rick's salt, and while that's cool, the massive line of customers shows he totally overdid it. It'd be awesome if the whole town teamed up to make this place thrive, and since that's exactly what Luna's aiming for, he's ready to use his powers to make it a reality. Right then, he spots a guy asking about the salt. It's super weird to see a guy walk in at this hour, and even though he looks like a legit adventurer, maybe he's just here to check out some souvenirs. Luna asked Rick what was up, but he played it off and said he was just stuck in his own head. Then he asked her if she knew any sick spots in town to go and grind some levels. She was just about to head over to the town hall and asked if he wanted to tag along. The deputy rep might actually have some answers, so Rick is totally down to go check it out. He followed right behind her while that male customer kept a super close eye on them from the back. The second they finally made it to the town hall. This guy with glasses walks up and introduces himself as Harris, the deputy rep, before giving Rick a handshake. He was seriously thankful for the help with the election, but Rick just brushed it off because he refuses to let anyone play dirty. Harris let out a grin after hearing that, totally relieved he didn't have to work with those wild whales in this room. And man, this guy is actually super honest. Then he turns to Luna and warns everyone not to sleep on her either, especially since she just rolled up with such a handsome guy. Luna's totally lost and tells him she doesn't. Either way, He's totally sure Zaji is hyped that Luna became the representative. Oh, he realizes he should probably offer them a seat and some of those special grapes Zurich is famous for. Rick crashes onto the couch and snags a slice for himself. Luna sat down next to Harris and spilled everything she knew about Rick. They're hitting her up for leveling tips. Rick's asking about the best places to hunt, and Harris just pushes up his glasses because they totally ditched the guild to come here. He definitely made the right call, because the adventurers in this town are basically total trash. And while Luna tells him to chill out, Rick is super curious to know what he actually means by that. Harris explains that since Zurich is right next to the Empire, all the pros ditch the town for better pay, leaving behind only the weak noobs and the troublemakers who are stuck there. Luna jumps up and yells at him for taking things way too far, but Harris just brushes her off and keeps moving. Since the guild is basically a ghost town right now anyway, he figures he might as die. This whole mess might actually be perfect for Luna's plan, so Rick looks at her and asks if she's finally making her move. Yup, she's actually thinking about starting the trade back up. Zurich has the massive Granding Empire to the east and giant mountains to the south. But since monsters are now crawling all over the northern plains and western forests, they're stuck only trading with the Empire. She's planning to send out hunting missions for monsters in the northwest, but Rick's not even sure if there's anything left to take down. And standing right there was the Queen's ant. This massive ant is 3 times bigger than a grown man. But the real nightmare is how insanely fast they multiply. These soldier ants just keep spawning no matter how many they kill, and with so many squads already wiped out, it's clear Harris was right. We can't count on these adventurers for anything. They were trying to borrow the strength of a former hero party member, and while Luna looked totally stunned, Rick's face went ice cold because he already knew the truth. Exactly. Since this whole country is built on trade, every secret from around the world ends up right here. Harris definitely knew way more about Rick than Hines did, and Rick was starting to freak out, wondering just how much this guy actually knew about him. Luna's jaw dropped when she found out Rick used to be in the Heroes squad, so he apologized and explained he wasn't trying to keep it a secret. It was just, Luna finally gets it, and now everything is starting to make total sense. Basically, they're asking for his help because they know he's a total beast, and they're willing to pay him big time to help take down the Queen Ant, which, wait, if he takes it down all by himself, who's actually going to get credit for the kill? If he steals all the guild's jobs like he did with the salt, the adventurers will lose their pay and their pride, so we seriously need a better plan. Harris turned to Rick and asked him what he thought about the whole thing. Rick was totally down and decided to take the job. He told them to forget the money for now since he just wanted to find out where those monsters were hiding and how many he was dealing with, so he asked to go scout first, and when. So they're just gonna hook him up with a guide to show him the way. The next morning, Rick headed out to scout after saying peace to his mom and thanking his gramps for the sick new gear. Karen gives Dago some major props for working his tail off on that research. He was low-key stalking their shop and acting like a total tsundere, but as soon as Rick reached the meeting spot, he started looking everywhere for his guide. Instead, he bumps into Luna, and she just gives him a super casual good morning. He's staring at her massive suitcase, wondering where on earth she's going with all that gear. Then, it's time to move out, but Rick's low-key wondering if the town's leader should really be his personal tour guide. But hey, she said it's fine, so